Yeah, part two. I thought we'd do part two of the Norm interview. It's been a good interview so far. I might look up, see who else Ron Bennington's had. Because it has actually been good, and I do actually think Ron Bennington is funny. He's very like a bit like Anthony in a way, able different style, but able to keep up when he's with a comedian. But yeah, let's go.
So, are you still with the store?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
So when you,
by the way,
yeah.
I'm sorry,
Go
but I love stand-up comedy so much. Adam made the store great.
Yeah,
it was in real tough
yeah.
shape, and he really single-handedly turned it around. So.
It was a group effort, but thank you, Norm.
Well, yeah, I would have thought the room would have applauded. But
no,
I guess
they
we're
don't.
on the East
We're, yeah, the East, I was
Coast.
just gonna say we're in New York. Well, I think the Cellar is the closest.
Yeah.
And God, I love the guys at the Stand. They do great work. Like I think that New York and L.A. I mean, there's really, it's always been New York and L.A. for the most part,
They're different though.
Yeah, they're
as you always say.
But would you be in a position if somebody controversial said that was a big name, I want to go on?
Well, Roseanne was scheduled to come in last week, and she didn't show up. I know she's going through.
You're not helping.
Well,
yeah.
I think that I agree with a lot of what you guys have said about free speech, and I'm a strong believer in, especially in comedy. I mean, it seems like the last place that you can truly have some, free speech, or should, and good God, it's comedy. I mean, people are trying to, you're trying to make people laugh, and it's unfortunate when all the outrage is over that.
And this has happened for so long.
Yeah.
I remember when I was starting out, Andrew Dice Clay was a big thing. And I remember talking to Kinnison because he didn't like being compared to Andrew. You know what I mean? And I thought he had the perfect line. He called Andrew a stag act. That was like the perfect description.
Kind of.
But people would be women. Oh my God, I can't believe what he said. I said, and I go, well, he just said he fucked Mother Goose.
Right. Yeah. So there's no one, Adam. You wouldn't put? Would you put Cosby up?
No, I personally wouldn't put Cosby up. Luckily, it's not I don't own the club.
Yeah.
And luckily, I don't have to make that call.
But if they put Cosby up, what would you do that night?
I would do nothing. I need to make a living.
If
they decide that's their club,
yeah.
I wouldn't.
That was the
Cosby.
Nuremberg defense. I think.
That was I need to keep living.
By the way, doesn't Adam have one of the best speaking voices
that
you've ever? It just literally.
It's like Welsh.
Yes, it's amazing.
Richard Burton.
You should be
Dylan Thomas.
Yeah, you should be doing poetry on stage.
I disagree, but thank you.
So, how did you guys come together with this show? How did this?
We've been friends for a long time. I met him at Tempe Improv, which was the best club in the country in my mind. I mean, I don't like theaters. I like comedy clubs, and he was the manager there, and then he moved to LA, and we were friends. And when I said at a talk show, I said it'd be fun to do. I like the sidekick paradigm from when I was a kid little boy watching Johnny Carson. And it's funny, that you got this guy and then the sidekick sort of averse to the host and is a little scared of him. But it's all playful. Yeah. And I said, but what if you just got a guy and amplified that and just fucking abused him mercilessly? And so that's why I didn't want to get a comedian. I didn't want anybody that would blow back at me. And but an interesting thing happens because it's me, Adam, and the guest, and it's some sort of sociology experiment because within 10 minutes, Judge Judy is fucking calling him an idiot. You know what I mean? Like people, you got a bully and a bullied,
Yeah.
And a third person goes, I'll go with the bully.
Yeah. Well, that we learned in school, right? In like first grade, like even if you weren't a bully, it's better to be like, "Hey, that kid is fucking weird looking." That's true.
Yeah, this is
You know,
true, yeah.
that's the way that you get comfortable in life. So, well done, Adam.
Yeah.
Well, just well done.
How do you get comfortable? Say that part again. I
Yeah.
didn't quite
Well, I'm
understand.
saying, like, even if you're not the bully, it's great to know someone else is being bullied because that gives you your own safety net.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
right.
you know,
right.
so
There's
that-
a trick stand-up comedians do. I was thinking of writing a book, How to Be a Stand-Up Comedian. No comedy necessary. Because I would go around at clubs, you know, and I go, that guy looks familiar. Yeah, he was the bouncer last week, you know.
Yeah.
And they just watch and they learn the tricks. But one is this mob control. You know, I don't know a lot of the tricks. I wish I did, but like you'll take a guy in the front row, look at this guy with the hat, you know, that fucking hat, and so everybody else in the fucking crowd goes, "Oh my God, I got a hat here too." So I don't want to be pointed out, so I'll fucking also jump on this guy, and it's just these little mob control techniques that these stand-up alleged stand-up comedians use.
well, there are. I mean, occasionally you will meet.
Don't Patrice say? Patrice says something similar about bombing on stage. People, he's like, you'd think people would go, no, we're going to help this guy on stage. We're going to help him get through this rough patch. And he's like, but they don't. When there's a crowd and there's a comedian bombing, he's like, everyone just thinks, oh, good. I get to ram my foot on someone's neck, like, and make this as uncomfortable for him as possible. Yeah.
The comedian who wasn't the funny guy in his neighborhood. You know what I mean? He's a guy who works real hard and probably would have made it in any business because he works real hard, but he just happened to have picked comedy.
Yes.
But you don't want to be stuck in this situation with that guy. You know what I mean? Because it's always about his prepared stuff.
Well, that's different from being a funny person, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That you learn it. Yeah. This is what I always thought about the Harvard Lampoon or the National Lampoon. When I was a boy, Mad Magazine we would read. I'm sure you did.
Yes.
Cracked and Sick and all those Mad Magazine types, and then move on to National Lampoon. And it's kind of sad to me that kids don't have that anymore. They have The Onion, but that's just the headline. But anyways, it was sort of the way you grew up, and I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
It's about being funny, naturally funny.
That when I went to Saturday Night Live, I got to meet some of these geniuses from my youth reading comedy. So it was Michael O'Donoghue, and there was Steve O'Donnell, and there was Jim Downey. And God damn, these guys were fucking geniuses. So, and it's because they went to Harvard, like Jim Downey, a very good friend of mine. He went to Harvard, and he took Russian literature. And he was so fucking smart, this guy, so smart that he decided to learn Russian so he could understand the Russian literature better. So, 20 minutes later, he learned Russian. So then on his off time, and this is what I heard from all the guys there at the time, on the off time, they go over to the Harvard Lampoon and scribble a story, and it was hysterical, and those guys, Conan was one of those guys, and then Harvard became a place where it was like, I'm going to go to Harvard to be a comedy writer.
Right.
And that's where...
Yeah.
That's where everything went off the tracks. Because when I first got to L.A., everybody in every writing room was a Harvard guy, and I remember telling my agent, I go, I can't talk to a fucking Harvard guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I got 8th grade education. What the fuck am I gonna say? I thought they'd be so funny I wouldn't be able to understand their jokes, and then I met them, and they're just rich. I didn't know that's the way it worked.
Yeah.
But they became professional, and they weren't funny, but they studied it.
Right. They have the humor math down.
The humor math down. Yeah. But I remember Tommy was sort of telling me, he said, you know, we can teach anything in baseball. We can teach, but one thing we can't teach is speed. And I feel that sometimes with comedy.
Right.
You can learn every trick, every haiku, but you're either funny or you're not.
Yeah.
You can't learn.
I think that I say that with music, that you can teach someone anything to do with music, but you can't teach someone rhythm. It is either something they have or they don't. And when someone don't, it's kind of a. But they could be great mechanically as a. They could know everything to do with music, but they haven't got that just feel. Yeah, but yeah.
And I always prefer people that are just, they can't do anything else but this,
Yes.
you know?
And that's what these old guys. We had a guy on a sitcom once, and his name was Jerry Belson, and he was. You'll see his credit with Gary Marshall's on The Odd Couple, and he come in and he just pitched jokes, and then everything's about story now. Well, what about the guy's got to have feelings for the girl? It's all these love stories and everything. You go because he had The Odd Couple. He goes, we had two guys. One was messy, one was neat. They needed to get laid. We had the Pigeon sisters upstairs. So, but he said that everybody thought he was crazy.
Mhm.
Like literally, if you said you were a comedy writer, people were like, "What the fuck? That doesn't exist."
Yeah.
Now it's what are you gonna? Your son gonna be a lawyer, a doctor, a comedy writer.
Because all those jobs lead to producing, and that's what, the Harvard kids are thinking
Yes.
about. Is like, I can have 2 or 3 of these shows going, and I can be incredibly rich.
Sure.
And you're like, yeah, but what,
And I'm sure you've been in comedy rooms many
Yeah.
times. The head writer is never the funniest writer.
Mm.
He's the political guy that can talk to the network, and naturally, actual comedy writers by nature are isolates and
Right.
not very good socially, so they don't rise up
yeah.
to make the money, but they tell the jokes that the rich guys use.
Well, the entire time on SNL,
It is, yeah. I think it's just of an artist that like for example Elvis. Do you think Elvis would have ever got to the level he got without what's his name, the Colonel backing him? Yeah, Elvis didn't give a shit. He was giving millions away and that, and getting told off for it. Do you think the Beatles tried it, didn't they? They started their own company where they're just like, we're gonna let just everybody come and record whatever they want, but it doesn't work. And that's where you do need that business mind, and that's why, not to go political, but that's why the left and the right is so at each other's throat in the West at the moment. But both sides need to realise that they need the other to exist. Because your left wing people are more your artists, and the right wing people are more your businessmen. You can't have one without the other. It's like it just doesn't work. You like for example, yeah, Elvis gave a lot of stuff away and all of that, but he had all that money because, like my dad says, the Colonel was making "I Hate Elvis" t-shirts because he knew there was people out there that would hate Elvis. There's people that's going to wear "I Love" thing, but now you're not going to do that as an art. Typically, artists don't have that money, that kind of, yeah, like he said, that they're also outsiders and introverts, and yeah, you need the two sides to coexist together and work together. But yeah, I don't think that's ever going to happen. Politically, well, at least not for a while yet. Everybody hates each other.
you're pretty much a contrarian. You didn't seem like you were playing the political game very well at NBC.
Uh,
Like when people would say, don't do OJ jokes, you'd give them 3 or 4 that night.
I did what Lorne Michaels told me to do.
Yeah.
Lorne Michaels was my boss, and Lorne Michaels hired me, and I would never do anything that Lorne didn't say. there were people that I was very naive, and there were people hanging around the hallways in blue suits. I thought they were pages. And turned out they were super powerful people. But they wouldn't introduce themselves, so they go like, and everything. You need to tell me something straight out. I don't know nuance. I have dog whistles for racism.
Yes.
You got to straight out tell me, you're a racist.
They normally
you
don't.
need to use a whistle. And even whistles I don't hear. Anyways, so but they would tell me, you guys should lighten up, maybe on the OJ joke, and I go, thanks. Can you get me a cup of coffee? Because I thought they were pages.
Right.
I didn't know. So, but Lauren was my boss, and anything that Lauren said, I did. I did that with all my bosses. They own the cameras, and I'm not stupid enough to think that I should be allowed to do anything on television, or anything or anywhere. Like people always like to ask comedians, like, is there anything off limits? And I always think that most things are off limits. At least for me, most things are off limits.
Until you can find that really funny thing about it that everybody would enjoy, because there are topics that are so off limits, and then I see somebody come up with something, and I go, well, that's brilliant. You know what I mean?
Right.
You say, oh, there could be a cancer joke, but then sometimes you see somebody pulls off a cancer joke that a guy with cancer is going, that's amazing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
You nailed it.
Right.
But it has to be that joke. You have to be that good at it. And
But it's often not a joke about.
That's kind of a crazy moment as to what happened with Norm. Yeah, that only really Norm would have got that. That's kind of crazy. That's hindsight.
It's often a joke about something.
the experience of
Anything. It could be anything. It could be a joke about pride, or it could be a joke about shame. It just happens to have cancer in it, But that's what's so hard was people ask you to defend these offensive jokes, and usually the offensive jokes are fucking the worst joke you've ever heard.
Right, yeah.
So
they missed.
Yeah. You don't really want to.
Well, you brought that up after the first guy does it. Everybody thinks, let's go there. That happened, I think, with Kinnison, where he was doing, religious material, but people didn't realize his background was amazingly, religious, and he found spots that everybody could go, oh, that's really, really funny, because he knew what the hell he was talking about.
That's really true.
Yeah.
And I remember, and the agenda of the joke was being funny, which I think has to be the first thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, his religious stuff is the funniest stuff because it's not about, making fun of evangelists.
Right.
Is not the
But it was also,
cutting
I always
edge.
thought his stuff was like Jesus having to put up with us.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
that was the
was
greatest.
always the funniest
It was
part
always the
of that
funniest. It
joke,
was
that
the
he would be
funniest.
screaming
Yeah.
at us. And I could fucking totally get that.
Yeah, of course.
I
yeah.
can't imagine how frustrating it must have been.
And the lepers, or the blind coming in to be
Yeah.
healed, and he's like,
Can I have a moment to myself?
Yeah, a moment to
Everybody was
myself.
bothering him wherever he went. How did you get the guests for this Netflix show that you have? Because it's a pretty amazing group of people that you're able to pull together.
Yeah. Strangely, I became friends with Ted Sarandos. There's only, I don't have that many friends. And Ted was real nice to me, and we shared a lot of interests and stuff. And he wanted me to do something. And I wrote a book, and he read the book. What guy reads any book, let alone, the head of a network reading some Down syndrome guy like me, trying to write a book. But anyways, he liked it, and I was so blown away by that he took the time. And then he said I was his favorite comic, and I said, "How about you give me $20 million?"
We know you got it.
Exactly.
We read the papers.
But he's a turns out he's also a businessman. But so he wanted me to do something, maybe make that book into a movie, and we were trying to figure out what I could do, because I can't do much. And then Letterman came in for his own show and said Norm should do a talk show, and then I said, well, Letterman knows everything, I should go with him, and. But it's a talk show. Letterman's been of such help to me because he knows what I can do and what I can't, and so he gave me so much great advice for this show, and he even said, like he said, I'm not giving you advice on how to be a great interviewer because you'll never be able to do that. But so he goes, a lot of this advice is going to be completely counter to what a broadcaster or an interviewer such as yourself should do. And he said, just make it a conversation. And
It's the most casual thing I've ever seen on TV. You guys come walking out together.
Yeah.
You offer a beverage. You kind of start the show halfway through. So it really is. It seems like it's everything that I see on TV, especially with talk shows, is so overly rehearsed and done. It's very, very tight.
Right.
But yours has enough breathing room that something could happen. Doesn't always happen, but it could happen.
Right, it could.
Yeah.
Lori Joe, I don't know where Lori Joe is, but she was kind of the brains behind the idea of the show, and I've been working with her for 20 years or so, and she was saying, like, every time you do a talk show, the people always ask the same thing. They go, except for my father. Something just occurred to me. The first time I ever did Letterman, the other guy, it was me and a guy that made potato chips that looked like presidents. Like one looked like Richard Nixon, sort of. Not that much. Looked more like a potato chip. But anyways, my mother was like, oh, how proud she was of me. And she goes, oh, your dad wants that. And my dad's like, did you get to meet that guy with the chips? But anyways, what I was going to say was, what was I going to say? Oh, no, that Lori Joe said, you know what everybody asks you all the time, and I'm sure you've heard this, is what goes on in the commercials. What does Letterman talk to you about? And so she said, we should have that show, but also the show behind the show. So, we don't have commercials, but people need to have breathing room. So we say we'll take a break, and then we just tape that, and then
it's so.
And I almost got Spade because Spade is the guy I really wanted to get, and so he told me a story during the break, and then I said, "Okay, we're back. Tell that story." And then he almost did, but there's something inside him that's canny enough to have not fallen for it.
You know what? One of my favorite moments was too is you were talking about Letterman. Do you ever hop up? And he said he couldn't because of nerves, and you brought up nerves, and then you told an amusing thing about Jay, how comfortable Jay Leno is, and you saw such joy in Dave's eyes laughing about Jay that there's still something between those two guys, because that's been the big strange divorce of our whole lives.
It sure has. And I wanted to get Dave and Jay together for the show, and almost did it, but didn't turn out that way. But hopefully in season 2, we'll get Jay.
Well, you could see that it's there's something there, particularly as you get older.
Yeah, there's been some great bits on this. That thing where you're saying about comedy, that has to be funny. It's the same as, because everybody's political, that's like, but it's the same with political comedians or political musicians. Like, whatever, you can't hijack the art form. And you do a disservice to the art form by basically not being not doing it for the music side of things or the being funny, for the actual comedy side of things. You're doing it because you have a political message that you want to say, and the political message is more important than the actual song itself. And it isn't, like, not in the art world. Like, it has to be a good piece of art. Otherwise, yeah. And it is. It's like you can watch comedians with any political, they can make any joke on any political thing, but it's yeah, the funny. Don't mistake your job. You're not a political preacher or a whatever. You're a comedian, and it has to be funny first. And that's like something with Norm. Dave Chappelle has it too, I think. That they're even in their stand up, and even when they're, you feel like, and sometimes you do get serious moments out of both Dave Chappelle and Norm, but it's almost as if the being funny is like always with them. Like sometimes it's like both of them are good at it, leading you into serious things where you think they're going in a serious, but then make just the most childish joke. Like both of them do it. Dave Chappelle does it, and it's hilarious. And but it is kind of like there's no real there's no agenda behind the joke other than. But then Hollywood's, I think, going through the same trouble. Hollywood can't get over the putting in the woke ideology. Like that's the important thing to have in the film instead of making the film good itself. Like the film has to be good. You can put any agenda you want in it, but if you are just doing it, if the film is just a checkbox of the woke agenda, it's not a film. It's just political propaganda. It's just propaganda. It's a political message. It's not a film. And it's the same with anything. Is like there has to be, the art form has to be paramount. And what else did he go into as well? I can't remember. There was another thing he touched on after that as well, which I thought that was a great point. But yeah, that's funny that his dad wanted to meet the chip guy. It's pretty legendary. Norm's dad was, yeah. But what is it with that shit? Where people see Jesus on a apple or something, and yeah, they get on every TV show for it. It's an odd thing. But yeah, that's part two. Sweet.